Okay, guys, so this is my first time back in a while, and I wanted to, do something that I really liked and am really passionate about. So I wanted to talk about Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. And I decided the best way to do this would be to rank all the partners, and in a tier list format. Now, when I say tier list format, most people get worried because it's like, it's mostly subjective, but I'm going to take advice from the Warcraft 3 streamer Grubby and use it more as a platform just to kind of talk about what all the characters do, what I like about them, what their weaknesses, what their strengths are, and I think there's no better character to start with than Goombella, so let's start with that. So, we have the game open here, and we're in, what's it called? Man, I cannot actually remember. Twilight Town. And we're just gonna do some encounters here to showcase all the partners. So, Goombella is a pretty standard partner, I'd say, but also one of the best if you're a completionist. So, her first ability, Tattle, allows you to gain information on the partners, and I'll do it here. As you can see, it's got a great animation. Yeah, and she'll tell you a little bit of information and also give you an idea of how to defeat the enemy, which is really useful. In the build I'm playing right now, I don't really need Goombella, or partners at all, so I thought it would be a good way to showcase each partner's ability. But I'd say the main reason, the first thing at least you look at when you see a partner, is you look at their starting, their basic attack, basically, right? And Goombella's basic attack is, Head Bonk, which is a 2-part attack that does, 3 damage a tick. Or sorry, I think 3 damage a tick at max level, but it starts by doing 1 damage a tick. We'll see how much it does here. I should have stylished that, just for the sake of it. And we're just gonna skip with Mario, I think. Actually, you know what? Let's defeat them. I know this was not the best place to do it, because these enemies can actually be really irritating if you mess up against them. I should have thought this through. But yeah, Head Bonk is a decent ability that, is pretty much the most standard of any of the abilities that all your partners get alongside Koops. It does low damage, it hits multiple times, and it is, pretty solid. You can attack the spiked enemies, though, which is Goombella's biggest downside. But she has 2 of the strongest abilities in the game, Tattle and Rally Wink. Rally Wink allows her to give Mario another move, and, if you're doing a damage-focused Mario build like I am, or, for example, 3 spiky Goombas, Goombella can't do anything against it. So for the sake of the argument, I'll go ahead and only hit the first one. And now we can see Rally Wink. Multi-Bonk, by the way, is basically just Power Bounce, but in, Goombella form. So Rally Wink allows you to give Mario an extra turn, which is just, probably the most powerful ability in the game. And, as you can see, Mario has an extra turn, so now I can just multi-bounce. It does cost a lot of FP, though. I think 4 is the base FP it costs, and I'm using a, PP down on it, FP saver partner, I believe. So, yeah, it's really pricey, but for such a strong ability, that is a fair price to pay, I'd say. But yeah, Goombella does great against air attacking enemies. We've seen all of her moves except multi-bonk, which is pretty similar to head bonk, so I think you get the gist here. And we are going to add her to the tier list. So, considering how important Goombella is, I think we also need to make a point out of rearranging or reorganizing the tiers so they make more sense. So, I would put Goombella in A if she didn't have Rally Wink, and she didn't have, Tattle, but she has both Rally Wink and Tattle, so she is great. I'd like to specify all heroes are all partners are great in the game. Great. We don't even need this many tiers. Can we get rid of tiers? We're basically only gonna need 3 for this. Good. Solid niche. And always out. I'm putting Goombella in the always out tier because, personally, if you're playing a Mario-centered build like I am, you are pretty much always going to be using Goombella. Koops can't attack air minions, or at least not at base level. But he does have Shell Shield, so this turn is not completely useless, is a big point to make. So we'll have Koops move first, and we'll showcase his Shell Shield, because Power Shell is his hits everything powerful attack, goes through all the enemies, and it's great. But Shell Shield is kind of just a timing ability, which I do not use Koops a lot, so, you know, I didn't get max value. But Koops is also the naturally bulkiest partner that you get on your team. He has a base 1 defense, and it can make him pretty powerful, but if he gets hit by enemies that jump on him, just like normal Koopa enemies, which, by the way, I think this is brilliant, he also gets knocked over and loses his defense value. So, we're just gonna blast through these enemies with Mario because, you know, no reason to keep them around. We've shown off what Koops can do. But, yeah, at base, Koops is powerful. If you're not running a Mario build, then you're probably gonna want to use Koops because he has that natural 1 defense, so you can have Koops in front, even if you are running a Mario build, like Danger Mario, like I am. It is always nice to have Koops out because he can deal with a lot of the ground enemies, and, you know, Mario's jump is, I think, preferred by most people. But Hammer Mario's fine too, you always have other abilities to use that can hit the air. So let's show off some of Koops' other abilities. To be honest, I barely ever use Koops, so we're gonna try Shell Slam and see how that works out for us. Repeatedly tilt to the left. Alright. Wow. Powerful move, but really costly. The problem with the partners in Paper Mario Fasten Your Door, this is a little bit off topic, is that they can't, what's it called? Do a lot of damage. They just don't get as many power-ups as Mario does, so their peak is much lower than Mario's peak. Having said that, I think Koops is incredibly useful for niche situations, like for example, Shell Slam pierces defenses, which can be very useful against Clefts, or I'm trying to think of another enemy, Spinies maybe? I think those are the right enemy name. And he has a niche in creating a Shell Shield for Mario, which gives Mario extra hits of defense, which, as we know, are, you know, more defense, especially if you're running something like I am, is always going to be good for Mario. So with that in mind, we are going back to our tier list, and I am going to give Koops a solid niche tier. Against defense enemies, enemies with defense, Koops is a great pick to have, and by the way, all of these partners are great. I would not, I would recommend just using whichever one personally if you're just in it for the story, to just play whichever one you really like. So this is more just talking about what partners provide, because Goombella is still weak to spikes, but I put her in the always out tier because of Tattle and Rallywink. But Koops is much better if you're doing a more balanced playstyle, where your partners are contributing just as much as your partner. Your partners are contributing as much as Mario, I should say. So Koops could be in the always out tier, and I know a lot of people like Koops a lot, so he is, you know, just great. All-around solid partner. Alright, we're back, and we are ready to showcase Flurry's talents. So, I'm going to be frank with you, Flurry has one of my least favorite basic attacks, just because of how you actually have to use it. Her basic attack is Body Slam, which, as you can see here, is a targeted attack, and I just have so much trouble actually hitting the attack. But it gets the job done. I mean, as you can see, it did massive amounts of damage, and she has the same weakness to spiny enemies that someone like Goombella does, and I guess a lot of the jumping enemies. And depending on where the spikes are located, even other partners you'll get later on have the same weakness, like Yoshi. So, yeah. Moral of the story, Flurry has a solid basic attack, but it's kind of annoying to perform over other basic attacks. Now, she has an interesting secondary attack, as I've spoken about, Gale Force. It allows for her to deal with enemies that she normally shouldn't be able to hit by just blowing them off the screen. You know, blow away your problems. And as you can see, battle complete. And I didn't even have to touch the enemies. Isn't that just, like, fantastic? I mean, it costs a lot of FP to use, so it's another one of those things where you might be going in the negative in terms of FP, not gonna be able to regen it all unless you have a couple Flower Finder badges. But I'd say those are her two main uses. She has two more abilities, Dodgy Fog and Lip Lock, which both have niche uses and cost a little less FP. But oh, I'm not very good at this one. Oh, that's tragic. It's a good ability. It allows her to regen health, which is fantastic. And really useful in a lot of cases. So, while Flurry is useful, back to our tier list, I think she is lacking in one particular field, which is that, or actually, I don't think she's lacking in any field. I think she does tanking well. She has a lot of health as a partner. She has a lot, a way to deal with every type of enemy, which Koops cannot deal with flying enemies at all, which is a big downside for Koops. And she can also buff Mario if necessary, which, although Koops has his shield, which is a buff for Mario, he just can't deal with flying enemies, so you can lose a turn if you're running Hammer Man for, some reason, and don't have Hammer Throw. But, regardless, I think Flurry is worthy of being always out, and you know what? I'm removing the good tier. I think all the partners are pretty much gonna be in one of two tiers, and by the way, I'd like to specify once again, I think all the partners are viable. If you're worried about a partner not being viable, I want to encourage you to not be worried about that, because I would just play with partners based on how you gel with their personality, and that is the most important thing. Now, we're gonna get to another fan favorite now, which is Yoshi. Now, Yoshi is a partner that I don't really gel with personally, but that's just because his primary attack has a weakness to spiky, and although he technically can deal with spiky enemies, it's just always bothered me when that he also has a strange cadence. He's a love him or hate him kind of character. So, Ground Pound is, I'm going to say, the, I believe, strongest starting ability you can get. Unfortunately, it does massive damage, but it doesn't penetrate defense, so that kind of made him look bad for no reason. I'm sorry about that. He is perfectly fine at dealing with enemies if they have no defense, but if they have one defense, that really just puts a damper on all of his damage. So, what else can Yoshi do? Well, he can also gulp, which is an ability that is pretty self-explanatory. He eats one enemy, spits them out, and it works best if there are two enemies. I believe it still does damage if there's only one enemy, but it doesn't do, You get more value if there's exactly two enemies. It is, again, a niche ability that I think has a big use. it is very useful and can still, get a lot of value out of it. Mini Egg is an ability that I don't like because I believe it falls in the same category of why would you do this to an enemy when you can just defeat them, but can be really useful in cases where you don't think you can defeat the enemy outright. Because as we can see, now when I block, no damage. And his last move is Stampede, which is very expensive and, does a lot of damage, but also has the downside of, I believe, being best against enemies with no defense. Yoshi's specialty is against enemies with no defense. He can't attack spiked enemies, and he can't attack, air enemies. So, only one big weakness, but his biggest problem is if you get an enemy that's flying that has 1 armor, then he's, loses a lot of his punch, but he can still knock them out of the sky. But Yoshi is, in terms of raw damage, I believe the highest damage dealing base partner ability, and still has a lot of utility because of that. So having said that, we're gonna go to our tier list again and rank Yoshi. We got to see all of his abilities, and what are we thinking for the little guy? Well, I think that he has a solid niche. His AoE ability can only attack ground units on Stampede, which, although that covers most of the bases, it means he can attack ground and air, deal with both sides of the coin, and Gulp. Actually, I'll give him Always Out, because I think he can deal with every enemy with his kit as necessary, and even with Mini Egg, he can help with bosses. So he is going up to Always Out, and it makes me feel kind of bad for Koops, because I'm realizing he's one of the only partners that really doesn't have a way to deal with both types of enemies, but we'll see more characters that have trouble with that later on. So, having said that, our next partner is Vivian. So, Vivian is a specialist when it comes to prolonged battles, which sounds a little weird, but she is great for if you're fighting a boss, if you're going into a battle where enemies have lots of health. This is where she specializes. Her base ability, which is Shade Fist, allows for her to do a lot of damage in one beefy hit, but also she'll apply a burn to them. And the burn, will do 1 ticking damage guaranteed. So, it makes Vivian kind of a force to be reckoned with, as if she can get her, off her Shade Fist, she can kind of whittle away at the health of a enemy just by staying alive. And it pairs very well with her second ability, which is Veil, which allows for her to pull Mario down into the shadows. That was a great button combo. And it allows you to avoid key mechanics. This isn't the best showcase of it, because I believe we missed the next turn when we come up. But, for example, if an enemy has a charged attack, I have never seen that before. That was... wow. I've never seen that before. That's kind of cool. Oh, well, there we go. Oh, it causes her to lose her turn. So, we're just gonna defend and see what this Goomba can do. Okay, it actually hit us the second time. But she has 2 more abilities. Infatuate confuses all the enemies, which unfortunately the Gloomba's already confused, so, not gonna be getting much value out of that. And Fiery Jinx, which not only hits all enemies, it's basically AoE Shade Fist, because it sets all the enemies on fire, and it also, does massive damage. 5 damage. So, great AoE option. It has a similar thing to Koops, except instead of bypassing the defenses instantly, it does 1 less damage and applies that damage as a damage over time in her next ability, and it also hits all enemies. So Vivian is another character who can deal with all enemies, I believe. To be honest, think that Fiery Jinx hits everything, if I remember correctly, and that puts her in a very strong position again. So we are going to go to our tier list now that we've seen everything except for her final ability. Vivian, I think, is also worthy of being always out. She is strong, she has Shade Fist so she can hit flying enemies. She has problem with enemies that are on fire, as does Goombella, as does... Actually, every partner has problems with enemies that are on fire. So, it's not really a big problem for Vivian specifically, but you would think she's resistant to fire considering she uses fire as a weapon and she's a ghost. But, hey, I don't know. That's just me. But yeah, another partner that you might want to consider having always out, but if I gave her a niche, Yoshi is against defenseless opponents. Flurry is, honestly, I would say an all-arounder tank, kind of a bruiser enemy. Koops is a strong against enemies with defenses, opposite of Yoshi here. And Goombella is just worthy of always being out. She is just Mario-centric build. I would say Vivian's strength is prolonged battles, because she can get more value out of her fire damage, which is a damage over time, and boss battles, which are also, you know, generally prolonged. So, she has a very strong niche, and although that would put her in always in the solid niche tier, realistically, I think we could put all of the partners in always out, but I think in terms of usability, Vivian's a little more usable than Koops, just because she can deal with all the enemies and doesn't have the massive downside of if she's tipped over, she loses a turn. Which I think is just really rough for Koops. I'm sorry, Koops, I like you. So, having said that, on to the next partner. Bobbery is a confusing one, because you get him late enough in the game where you've usually upgraded your other partners, like, once already, and I feel that he covers a lot of the same areas that other partners already do. So Bobbery's base ability can attack spiked enemies, but not air enemies. That's a big weakness for Bobbery, but it's a similar weakness. I'm just gonna go ahead and defeat the Goomba because we don't want to deal with the Fire Flower. It's a similar weakness to a lot of partners. He can't attack air, which, pretty big downside, I will admit. But I think that he has some, you know, some ground he can make up with it. Bobbery is very strong at, again, funnily enough, prolonged battles. A little stronger than Vivian, I think, even. He is a setup character that gets you a lot of value for thinking ahead, which kind of lines up with his old veteran sailor squad idea. So his second ability is Bomb Squad, which allows you to, based on where you line up your bombs, to throw your bombs to hit a specific position, and they'll detonate after a short period of time. So we're just gonna defend so you can see the bombs detonate. Bobbery is also very healthy, if you didn't notice. And we'll go ahead and use Hold Fast as well, which is a... Oh no, that is so bad. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, Bobbery can counter enemies now. It's a really useful ability, but... And I think it might do more damage based on how well you actually do on that mini-game. As you can see, the bombs are now gonna detonate, which they do a lot of damage and can hit multiple enemies, I believe, based on where you throw them. But they also have a big weakness in that he just, you know, that took so long to activate. A lot of partners would just, you know, have already done that and more. So, Bobbery's weird. He is probably my least favorite partner in terms of combat capability, but my favorite partner in terms of who he is, because I have a soft spot for the elderly in these games, and you know, I think he does a good job at filling that niche. He's also, as I've stated before, the last partner you get. I want to show off his last ability, so I'm just gonna Mario through this really quickly. Yeah, lots of health. Pretty good damage. He has a weakness against fire enemies, if I remember correctly. He can't actually detonate on them, which I would say gives him points off, but no partner really lets you do that, so we have one more ability to show off. Bobbery is great on enemies with defenses, though, because he just does so much damage. If you're fighting, like, you know, I think the Bones family is actually one of the best ones to talk about, because they, have passive defenses, and, I mean, you can't argue with results. He's a nuke. He, and, you know, we just spent 8, you know, mana there, but he can do 8 damage, not ignoring defenses, so I would say Bobbery's niche would be enemies that aren't strong enough to, it's a very strange niche. It's not enough defenses that Koops would be better on ground enemies, and not too little defense that Yoshi would be better. Having said that, I think Bobbery is my solid niche partner number 2. Unfortunately, I think he's gonna fall there, so let's open our tier list and slot him in. Unfortunately, Bobbery is going to solid niche. He is in a similar spot as Koops, except Koops has Defense Pierce, which could be useful in the later game against higher level enemies. You do have to max Koops out to get that. Bobbery has his Big Bomb-On Blast and Counterattack, which would seem really nice, but pretty much every partner has Counterattack through parry if you just time your abilities really well. And it makes me, like, call into question what Bobbery's special, like, his special spice that he brings specifically is. I would also say, again, just use your favorite partner if you're ever wondering, like, what should I do? Should I follow the tier list exactly? I think all the partners have their uses, and just use whichever one you like best. But, having said that, there is one secret partner you can get in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, which is Miss Mouse. So, I could go into the lore to how you get her, but I kind of want to keep that a secret for you guys, who haven't played it yet. I'm making this list because the remake comes out on, May 23rd, which is why I'm making this video. So, I would like to say Miss Mouse has a lot of the same weaknesses as a lot of the enemies here. For example, she can't attack flying, and she can't attack, what's it called? Spiky enemies. So, unfortunately, we have both of these here. We have Spinies, and we have, you know, a Goomba. I don't know if they're called Spiny Pokies. Sorry. We have Pokies, and we have a Paragloomba. I'm just gonna go ahead and defeat them so we can showcase her. But Miss Mouse is an entirely optional partner. You don't even have to see her. Her main draw is that she can steal items and badges from enemies without having to defeat them, and it guarantees you the item. This is, as I might not need to tell you, this is a very powerful effect, because enemies have a random chance to hold whatever badge, you know, whatever badge. It can be any badge in the game. Or, for example, there's a very strong item there. Let's say I want that. I'll go ahead and bonk this guy, just get rid of him, and I believe Miss Mouse should be able to steal it with Kiss Thief. Oh. I don't know what happened there. I guess I just messed it up. Because I thought I hit it after okay. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, because he's gonna use that item now. Probably on me. Oh, that was strange. I don't know why he would use it on her. But yeah, Miss Mouse's specialty is stealing items. That's her niche that she brings to the game, and I'd say what really makes her special. Because she has things like replenish Mario's HP, she can be a healer, but 9 FP, they make it so pricey that it's really never worth using. Just use a mushroom instead, which every partner has access to and is free. And we have Tease, which can make enemies dizzy, but that is a weaker version of Infatuate that Vivian has that can confuse all enemies, but also costs a lot less, to be fair. Not actually that much less. But it is a good alternative, and I guess I'll show Love Slap, which is a, you know, pretty generic ability. It just does a moderate amount of damage, and, you know, slaps the enemies up. So, overall, where would I rank Miss Mouse? I would not rank her very powerfully. I think she is honestly one of the weaker partners in the game, but she's also entirely optional, and that niche of picking up badges is super good if you are, like, you know, really into completionisting everything. But I'm pretty happy with that. We got through all of the partners. Now, let's add our final partner to the tier list. Miss Mouse is going to go in solid niche tier. And overall, that is all the partners in Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door we have here. The other partners are from previous games or, you know, obviously the games that came after. So, who would I recommend using on a first playthrough? I would recommend Goombella be out 99% of the time so you can tattle all the partners. Who would I recommend using in boss fights? Probably Vivian. You know, if they have a lot of defense, use Koops. You can shell slam them. If they have no defense, use Yoshi. Every character has their thing. Flurry is great at, you know, I don't know what to call it in Paper Mario, mobbing. You know, she's great at just dealing with general hordes of mobs, which is fantastic. Bobbery doesn't really have a use, but I think he's fun. He gives some, he has old person dialogue, which is always enjoyable to hear. So, I like to sub in Bobbery, and I think he has one of the best backstories out of any of the characters. I think the best backstory, I should say. I'll just hardline stance it. And Miss Mouse, entirely optional. You could remove her from the tier list and just go off these partners, and I think nothing would change. I mean, you know, your gameplay wouldn't change that much, but if you're a completionist, go for Miss Mouse. Upgrade her. She has her badge steal ability passively, or built in. So, no worries about that. And I think that's gonna sum it up. I'd like to thank you all for watching. I'd like to thank you for, you know, tuning in to this long review of Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door partners and me trying to show off all their abilities. I might condense it down to a more palatable format, but it was fun talking about Paper Mario again and you know, just playing the game after so long. Danger Mario for the win if that's in the remaster. Let's hope so. I'll probably play a normal run of Paper Mario, though, just because the panting and danger sound the whole time is a little much. But yeah, having said that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.